So a few days ago was the first official book launch day for Anomaly. And I wanted to document and walk you through a scenario that I went through that I think is most people wouldn't touch, most people wouldn't talk about. And I think it's really important not only to talk about the good times, but also the bad times, right? And I think this is incredibly important because I believe, again, that most people will only talk about the good instead of the bad, right? And I think that when you're going through life, this thing that we call life, you're going to have good and you're going to have bad, right? So for the last 6 months or so, people have started getting their hands on my book. However, in publishing world, I've learned that there are official launch dates, which means basically that when you're on Amazon, when you're on Barnes & Noble, when you're at, whatever bookstore, there's a specific release date. I had purchased a bunch of books on my own and was basically providing them out to the people who had bought them beforehand that I had exact ties to. And so for the last 6 months, I've been doing that, speaking gigs, performances all over the place, and promotions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, April 2nd, 2019 is the first date that, Anomaly is officially out, which is great. Took a long time to get there, it seems like, but it was here. And so had a day filled with some podcasts that were being released that I had pre-recorded, my normal day-to-day, which is something that I think is really just important, like treat all days kind of the same. And then at the end of the day was going to be this book signing at a local bookstore. And I have talked to a lot of different authors about different scenarios, and they all talk about, book signings are good, they're hard, but they're good. And so something that I never thought would have happened this night. Doing a book signing, and no one shows up. That's incredibly hard to say, I think, to a lot of people. I think that's something that a lot of people wouldn't come out here, put their face to camera, live on, television, which isn't television, and say something like that. Like, no one showed up to my party, right? And as I was sitting there at this event, I was like, man, this is not what I expected. But I think what's really, really, really important is to realize, roller coasters have ups and downs. Life has ups and downs. Business has ups and downs. Books have ups and downs. And so many ups on that one day, of course I had to have a down somewhere in there. And so as I'm standing at this place, it was really interesting because I was sitting there going, okay, why is this happening? And this is what I think is incredibly important. We are always in these scenarios, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever, and we don't analyze the data enough to understand why scenarios happen the way that they did. And so something really, really, really interesting happened at this event. So I'm talking to the owner of the bookstore, and I said, well, I guess we'll just reschedule this or something like that. And the owner said something that I thought was actually incredibly helpful in this. And the owner says, well, maybe you're just a conference speaker. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So then I took that data point and I said, okay, there's that. Then we have this scenario where no one shows up, because really they're just showing up to get a book, which there's no more added value into that, right? Potentially. And so I do a lot of speaking gigs. I do a lot of performances, talk 20, 30, an hour long. Talks go very well. Then I have lines of people waiting to talk to me afterwards, buy my book. Maybe the book has already been provided to them by the conference or the event or the organization. Then I sign in. People love it, right? You've seen a lot of my cover photos. You've seen a lot of my photos, hopefully, here at Zack Miller Says. And you can see that people are excited. People are reading it. People are telling me, and they're implementing some of the things. TJ Reed is starting a podcast because he read about it in my book. He's telling all his friends and so many others as well, right? Not just TJ. But when the owner of the bookstore said, well, maybe you're just a conference speaker, that was like this aha moment in there where it's like, wait a second. it's so difficult to get people to come to a bookstore, right? Or come to this bookstore. Maybe you should focus your time on these other things, which I am, right? I am focused on getting people to these events where I'm speaking at, but they also already have existing crowds, which is so incredibly powerful. And so some things, some takeaways. First off, people should have showed up to the event, right? And so absolutely I'm taking at fault for that. It's not the bookstore's fault in any kind of way. However, literally, I'm going to read this one part. Yes, I use American Forever stamps as a bookmark. Literally, this is the introduction to Anomaly. I say this thing, right? And I'm going to I would say that this book signing is the same as a party, right? So I say, in college, I threw parties several weekends a year. This is literally in the introduction. We're not even on page 1 yet. Nobody wants to go to a party that sucks. If your party sucks, the guests you want to show up won't, or they'll bail once they arrive and notice how lackluster it is. To get guests to my events or parties during college, I picked up the phone and invited them, or texted or emailed. The key is you must invite individuals and not just post an event on Facebook or a flyer on a college board, which is exactly what I did. I didn't even eat my own dog food. If you expect people to attend, it sounds simple, but that individual attention will increase your probability of getting guests. Eat your own damn dog food, Zach. It's a simple process, right? And so at the end of the day, my promotion was terrible for this specific event, right? And it's a good lesson learned, right? As I become, a bestseller, as Anomaly gets more people reading it and seeing it, I have to spend my time in spaces that are going to be best for me, right? And so if I can get in front of a group of 20 people, a group of 500 people, I'm driving up to Richmond tonight for a group of people there, and then I can win that crowd, which 99% of the time I win that crowd, that is where I need to be investing my time, right? And I think a lot of times people will look at data and they will say, well, there's this other little sliver that might be okay. And it's like, no, don't focus on that. You have to understand what that data is telling you. The data is telling me, Zach, get on stage, give an amazing performance, which you most of the time do. Most of the time, all of the time. And then once you do that, guess what? People will stay in line. They'll follow more of what you do, etc., etc., etc. These are all the things that we want to have happen, but we have to put ourselves in the right scenario that is going to have the highest probability for us to win, right? So my target market, right? I have to make sure that I'm talking to the correct target market. If not, guess what? Bad things happen, right? And I do posts like this. At the end of the day, I have to look at these things and say, yes, it's incredibly humbling to, on one of the most important days of, your quote unquote business life, no one shows up to the party. That's not fun. But then as I look back and I think about it, it's like, okay, you didn't eat your own dog food. It's it. It's okay. I remember the drive home, I was like, wow, this is going to be an interesting story to tell. I don't know what I'm going to say. And I knew I was going to say it. I didn't know how I was going to say it because I wanted to articulate this in a way so that it could be something not only for you guys to hear that, hey, the good comes with the bad, but also lessons learned for you, the listener, to be okay, how do I understand how to have this not happen myself? Right? And so as a guy that's put on thousands of events, definitely more than 1,000 events. I said thousands, maybe 2,000 events, maybe. I don't know. Not everyone always shows up, right? And so sometimes those are just outliers. But then, in this specific case, I think I didn't do the things that I know that I need to do all the time, right? And so you have to individually invite people. And that does not mean to do what I did, which was what most of you guys do, is you go into Facebook, you go into Eventbrite, you do this little thing, and you click the button, invite this person, invite this person, invite this person, invite this person. The reason that doesn't work is there is no individuality in that. There is no realness in that, right? I only invited a handful of people, and then I'm like, well, of course a bunch of people are going to show up. That's just what's going to happen. And then when no one does, duh. So call people. Individually message them. I did an event a week ago, and I individually reached out to people. I was like, hey, are you going? And people made sure that they were there. So you have to do that. That individuality is so important. supply and demand. It'll be really interesting to see if there is a legit supply and demand on how much Zack Miller can talk in his own hometown. So that'll be interesting. Can I do a talk in town every single week and still have strong supply and demand? I would think so, but maybe not. I don't think people are sick of me yet. Maybe there. But the most important thing out of this from the data that I'm looking at is what is the best and most important and the most reliable, the highest probability of Zack Miller to succeed, right? What is the highest probability of whoever you are to succeed? You need to put yourself in those scenarios, right? So if you continue to go to a bunch of networking events and they're not working out for you, is it the networking event? Is it your follow-up? Is it your strategy at the events because all you're doing is selling? What is it? You have to figure it out. You have to be very honest with yourself too, right? Very early on in the book, I say, take an inventory of your life and figure out where you're spending your time. Make sure that where you're spending that time is helpful. Because if not, good things, bad things don't happen. You have to promote if you want people to show up. You can't just do it once. You can't just say, hey, I'm having a party, please come. Because at the end of the day, no one shows up. Something that I think a lot of people would underestimate in this scenario too is how strong your mindset is, how strong you are in a scenario like this. I can see a lot of people on day one of their book officially going live, being at a scenario like this that I just went through where no one showed up to my party and being super negative about it. And I think I understand why that happens. I understand that it can be hard because, you think to yourself, I put so much work into this. Well, that's true. But how much work did you really put into this specific scenario? And in this case, the answer was not a lot. So of course I got the results I did. And so learning from this, being positive through it, and making sure you don't make these mistakes again, making sure that you have to learn from your lessons, positive and negative. Why did a bunch of people show up? Why didn't a bunch of people show up, right? There's been events before where, I've had hundreds of people show up, and I'm like, why did that happen? And I know the answer is because I individually reached out to people. I provided a ton of value, and it was something that people wanted to be at. They wanted to be included in, and I did a really good job of promotion of getting people to that event. It was hyped strong, right? Overall, Anomaly has been hyped well. This party, not so much. So that's that. Also, if you're wondering where you can get a copy of Anomaly, you can just go to Amazon or your local bookstore or Barnes & Noble. You can go online to those places, type in Anomaly, Zack Miller, that's Z-A-C-K Miller, Anomaly, or I'll also just link it here in the show notes as well. So I'm not saying that I'll never do a book signing again. I'm not saying that I won't, do events. But I do think that, when the bookstore owner said, maybe you're a conference guy, that was really, really compelling because my data definitely says that, right? Definitely go to an organization where there's already people there, give your talk, rock the stage, get people to buy. Or sell the organization to buy a book for everyone in attendance beforehand, and good things happen. Other than the book signing, was there enough value being provided to the person that was in attendance? And I think that yes, there would have been. However, that detail was not relayed in the promotion, the messaging, the collateral, etc. And that's something that I think I should have done a better job of promoting, right? Why should you come to this party, right? This party is going to be great because you're going to get, X, Y, Z. And your takeaways are going to be this, boom, boom, boom. And it makes people go, okay, this is worth my time. I want to be there. And at the end of the day, I just did a bad job promoting myself. I did a bad job promoting the event. And I own it. That's it. Hopefully it never happens again. But also lessons learned, right? In my opinion, the single most important thing is like when a mistake happens, when something doesn't go the way that you want it to, it's not a failure. A failure to me is not learning from those mistakes, right? A failure is not what happened, right? You have to learn from why those scenarios happened. That's the single most important thing. Why did no one show up to my event? Because I didn't give them a good enough reason to come. And I didn't promote enough. And that's it. That being said, here's my shameless plug. Grab a copy of Anomaly. How to finally stand out from the crowd. Tell your friends. Go to Amazon. Type in Anomaly. Zack Miller. It's the book. It's got a big plane on it. It has my name on it. It has a bunch of paper airplanes on it. It's red. It's beautiful. Check it out. And if you live where I live, I'll sign it. And I want you to think about this message. I want you to think about how incredibly crappy it is to have to come on and to tell people that you lost. Sure. But at the end of the day, what I've learned from this is that in all scenarios, I have the checklist of how to succeed. Right? When I don't use that checklist, I lose. You probably have that checklist too. And if you don't, it's probably an anomaly, let's be honest, right? But when we don't put in the effort to win, we don't win. When we put in the effort, good things happen. Put in the effort, follow the checklist, good things happen. Also, grab a copy of Anomaly. You can get it at ZackMillerSays.com/Anomaly. Go to Amazon, type in Anomaly, or look at the show notes, and I'll put in the description. Appreciate you. And until next time, follow that checklist, folks. Woo!